recess.
Sure.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call to order a special joint meeting with the City Commission and the Board of Trustees of the McAllen Independent School District being held today, Monday, December 3rd, 2018, beginning at 5 p.m. We are meeting in the boardroom at the McAllen Convention Center, 700 Convention Center Boulevard in McAllen. It's a list of agenda items for your review. Too many for me to go over at this point in time, and I'll leave that for your perusal later on. At this time, I'd like to mention two things. We're waiting for Mr. Farina, Trustee Farina, to show. Trustee Alvarado called me about an hour ago that he was called to Houston for a organizational meeting, and he thought he would be back in time. He will not make it. He's en route. We're working on trying to get him video conferenced in. I'm not sure that will happen or not, but in any case, he sends his regrets and asked me to pass that on to you all as well. At this time, I would like to recess our regular meeting and wait for the commission to open their commission meeting as well. So we are recessed. I rescind my recess.
Okay, and we'll convene the special meeting we held with the school board today. We're in boardroom number 2, and we have a quorum. Good. We decided to eat and talk at the same time. If that's okay with everybody.
Thank you.
This may be an easy one. Our first item on the agenda was looking at the possibility of moving to November elections. Although we can't do that now because there's not sufficient legislative authority to do it. I think every session there's something gets introduced, whether it's passed or not, another story. So we can talk about it or call that move, whatever you want. Although the reason we thought, there's reasons good and bad. Number one, we don't want to do it separately in the school district, obviously. So it'd have to be both agreed. So kind of the reason we thought is, I don't know about you, but I voted turnout so low that it was just kind of a way to try to increase voter turnout. And then with the Palenque being eliminated, I think it's more opportunity for people to actually vote for candidates as opposed to just go to employment button or whatever. But there's obviously some complications for that. Anyway, that's our thought process.
Just a point of order. We have Mr. Trustee Alvarado on speakerphone. Listening purposes, Mr. Alvarado, I passed on your regrets, and you're on board here at the meeting. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Rob. Thank you.
Was that speakerphone on your phone?
No, it's on Natalie's.
Oh, okay, well.
Mine's closed, but I can't. You're opening up for discussion. The election issue, I know I've had some calls and some discussions, informal discussions with some of the other trustees. Can you give us a little bit more background on how we got to this point and what we need to do to better understand the issue in terms of endorsing or not endorsing and how your commission feels about it as well?
Well, I think there's some confusion as to the election date because some school districts and cities are November and some are the April day and May. So I think there was some natural confusion as to when it's up, etc. Number one. Number two, voter turnout relatively poor. You lose that element of having all those other elections at the same time, and so it's an isolated situation. So we never discussed it at all. We thought we discussed it at a workshop, just mentioned it, and said we hope that it didn't get to you that we're trying to change the election dates because you've always had an agreement to do pull them together. So that's why we put it on the agenda to discuss that. Well, not being necessarily serious, just
And I'm sure our trustees are not shy about giving their opinions. Just a few things is that the county runs our elections and you all run your elections, so that there may be topic of discussion there in terms of either we go it together, one way or the other. That's some good may come out of this discussion because of the introduction. But Trustee Suarez has a comment or a question.
The only concern I would have is that during this previous elections, there's so many people on the ballot that I think it would water down the school election maybe we need city with other races that we go on. I know we went through like 20 to 30 different pages of voting for different judges and state reps, and I think that would take away, in my opinion, from putting as much emphasis on the city and on the school board.
Yeah, we haven't had, with you having the county, there was some polling places, I think, where that was confusing some voters, where to go, how to vote, and there wasn't, we don't, we heard that sometimes the county would say, now you go vote here for the city election, etc. And then for us, it's complicated because of shared school districts, part of the city of McAllen, so they have to vote separately. We don't have a joint election with them, obviously, even more confusing, so that creates problems for us. Trying to look at whether that would be easier in the November election, where, at least for the county, if the county ran, you can vote any place you want, which would eliminate some of that problems for us too. But it wasn't suggested that we would go with the county, but if November happened, we'd look at that, obviously.
Mayor, the House bill that was introduced, should it pass with the legislative session, kind of makes our point kind of moot, right? Because all elections will be done. Do you have any insight in terms of the, I guess, probabilities, it's a possibility of how that would actually come to pass?
Yes, the only thing I don't have any insight, Commissioner, but there's a similar bill introduced almost every session, and it's routinely opposed by the schools and cities for some of the reasons that you discussed here. And so, it's always possible to pass. The brief history of the previous one was that there was one that was passed a number of years ago that created a window that allowed cities, I don't know about schools, I'd have to defer to Steve, but it allowed cities, if they wanted to switch to November, they could do that up until, I think it was the end of 2016, and then that legislation expired. The city of McAllen considered that at the time that legislation was effective and elected not to go, not to move to November.
Is this most recent bill giving the entities an option, or it's saying
I've seen two versions, or I've heard about two versions. One is a bill similar to the previous one that gives an option, and then there's almost always one introduced that would make it mandatory. But again, it seems to be introduced every session. And again, I'm not saying it won't pass, I'm just saying in the past it hadn't got much traction because there are a lot of moving parts when you move an election. And so they're fairly routinely considered and not.
Well, one of the complications is in order to coordinate, if more voters are your thing, we'd have to coordinate with the election, which would extend my term a year and a half. So, that make it a few objections.
Oh, then we all object, okay?
I just said my offer term is a year and a half.
The board trustee Suarez brings up a very good point. I think in this most recent election, we have multiple pages that we had to go through electronically to go through it. So I think, certainly there's a concern of diluting the ballot itself of the contest, if there is one, in terms of the actual voter seeing and maybe skipping it or not realizing that it's there. However, from my point of view, I think it's very important, that our community stays engaged, whether at the school district level or the city. It seems that the highest voter turnouts are going to be in the midterms or the general presidential election. And I, for one, like to see more voter participation, and if that means where November seems to capture more people to at least cast a vote, I think we should try to avail ourselves of that opportunity, if possible, without causing too much disconcernment within our own entities in terms of who's going to handle it, whether it be the county or the city, at least from the city side. The logistics, then we have to look at election judges and who gets to do that, and so I know there's a lot of time and effort that would have to be involved here. But ultimately, from my point of view, my viewpoint is we want to encourage our citizens to participate in this process. I do firmly believe that both the school district and the city are transparent to our community, and for whatever reason, there's still a small amount of persons who are in disbelief of that. And I think both Dr. Gonzalez and Mr. Rodriguez have done an excellent job to do that. But I think as board members, we can go a little further to trying to track those who typically are not aware about the election in May to come in November. And after that, I don't know how many how much more transparent you can possibly get, you know, because I mean, it's about open government, and as much as we have a responsibility to making sure that our citizens are informed about what's going on in this school district in the city, you know, the citizen himself or herself also make an effort to be engaged. And I think by moving the election date to November is at least one additional opportunity for that citizen.
And I think the opposition to state level from the cities and the school districts that have the elections is they're afraid that if they support the option to do it, that they'll be the one that's forced down to do it. And so the safe way is just opposing both bills. Is I think what's happening. Okay, anybody else on that on our side?
Well, the only concern I have, I know we are going to be at the very bottom. Schools and cities, you have from governor to this, we'd be at the very bottom. So we may be doing it for the purposes of increasing our turnout, but a lot of people will just go do what they want to do and that's it. Because we've done it, we changed it. It was SB 51 the last time I think that they were given a choice. But we really need to consider, and we have time, but really weigh everything.
Are we saving a lot of money by doing this?
I think it'd be revenue neutral or cost neutral.
Something.
Yeah.
And clearly taken on
Go ahead.
Thank you. You know, it's great that we can discuss it and different advice. I think every candidate, every one of us is running, I know when I run every time, you want as many people to vote as possible. Believing that what your message point will be, the more they hear it and vote, the better chances are that you acquire the position in due course. And more importantly, once you're in the position, that again, with building constituency, building voter, building information, that again, you'll have them engaged in supporting programs and services that you wish to bring into play. I think all of us wish for that and strive for that, and we've done that in our respective races, and more importantly, once we attain the position. So this is a great opportunity for us to look at what other cities have done. We have some real nearby, in fact, one of them, and we're consolidated also, their school districts within the city of McAllen parts as well. So that's another race. And so see how they fared and how it's gone. I think it's always important to get as much out there, and getting as many people engaged, and we are doing that. Continue to do that, as Commissioner has pointed out. This may afford us another opportunity. The only concern I have is that the true democracy is at school board and city commission level, and mayor, of course. No party affiliation, you run on your own, you stand on your own, you speak for what people have heard you speak for, and support that position, realizing that it's one of 7 in our case, and one of the number there on the city commission, and it really keeps your finger to the pulse, short of parties getting involved and influencing in some way, shape, or form. And that will be a concern. Thank you.
Trustee Alicea.
That was my concern. I had 2 concerns. One is I wanted to make sure we kept it nonpartisan. The second concern is there's a lot of moving parts. All of our contracts, all of our calendar year is based on June through the following year. So our elections really, it's based on our elections in May, and then in June we have our own internal elections, and we have different contracts with different vendors and things like that. So our whole calendar year would have to be moved accordingly. So it would be a lot of work, a lot of changes for the school district. So for us, it's easier to just, and for the purposes of not putting parties into the election as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great comment, because there was, last time, there was a proposal to introduce requiring partisan politics for local government. Certainly want to aid in nonsense. Okay, anything else? Okay, let's say we haven't reached a consensus, but we're thinking just.
How about you get us some more information on it? We'll be glad to. I mean, it certainly warrants exploration. That's for sure. And we'd like to see delve deeper into the pros and cons of it. And
The only other pro would be, and of course, it would require us to change to go to the county, would be you can vote any place you want it.
And I think someone has brought it up in our charter. I think we might have to go to the voters. I don't know if that's.
City charter, maybe.
City charter.
For us, it's
So there would
just
have to
policy
be
change.
a referendum vote on that as well. Anyway,
Okay.
thank you, Mayor.
Number 2. You have the same one I do? Discussion and possible action on revisiting memorandum of understanding.
Do we have enough time today?
Well, we can decide whether we want to discuss it or not. We'll set that for another meeting.
I will say that there is one item in terms of the MOUs that has been discussed amongst us, and I think we've even had some conversations with our legal, and we may have had informal discussions with mayor and the city manager. So, having said that, someone want to speak to the MOU with the park at Pettis?
I wasn't aware.
Oh, yeah, everybody does. No, that one, actually, that was the one from 2005. The reason I know about that one is that my constituents, that's one of the areas that they've always, I can't say bugged, but I've expressed a concern. Since 2005, it has expired, so I think everything's kind of set now where we can proceed. But the add-in MOU had expired so long ago, so I need to figure out what we need to do, whether to proceed or how to proceed. Extend that, or what do we need to do?
Trustee Alicea, I think you had some comments on that.
Well, I mean, the same thing, I just want to know what the status was, because it was done in 2005, and if the stuff wasn't going to be done by a certain time, it was going to revert back to the school district. We really like to get more than just a walking trail there. We really, I mean, the schematics of it had all sorts of, there was tennis courts, there was an amphitheater, there was a track, there was, all sorts of things going in there. And then there was also the Auburn Street next that was going to be cut through. We're just wondering on what is in that district, what area, what's it going to look like? What's the timetable of Bicentennial being cut through? What's that walkway going to look like on Bicentennial and Auburn 5 Mile? When is Auburn going to go all the way through to 10th Street to alleviate the traffic in front of Morris Middle School off of Trenton, and to get that thoroughfare up and running for y'all so it's not backed up during the daytime? What is your time structure on the Pettis Morris Park? Because we've been waiting and waiting and waiting. We really want to jump that forward.
I can speak a little bit on the budget issue. That was a discussion that we had in the budget this year. And obviously Morris is an important asset for our city also. It always comes down to dollars. And so during the budget process this year, the city commission, and Commissioner Villalobos brought that certainly to my attention, decided to fund some of those improvements. We're looking at least a 2-phased approach and possibly 3 in order for us to complete what was originally discussed. So I think that you're going to start seeing some dirt being moved out there as early as 2019, and then hopefully we can fund it on a 2 or 3 year timeline and complete what was discussed way back when. It came back to the front burner, I would say, and we had a good year, luckily, revenue-wise, and so we're able to do some things that kind of were put as a secondary type of project. So I think it's got a good chance of being complete in a 2 or 3 year period. And that also is revise the MOU to reflect that.
Is there a way that we could get a group together to meet, monthly and work on and see what we can bring to the table, what you can bring to the table, what the PTOs can bring to the table, and see if we can, really start getting some pavilions there, and some, picnic tables, shade structures, water fountains, things like that, and we can, be a true collaboration.
Ms. Alicea lives around our area, actually, same neighborhood. So I know she has our residents, I know they express their concerns big time to her too. And those two have always been quite the biggest, Auburn to all the way from Maine to 10, and then Pettis. I know that Mike and Ruben have met regarding even fencing Pettis, for us providing some of the property, and then I think the school doing the fencing. So if we could hopefully move, get some committees, do something so that the people can see groundbreaking something. It'd be very important for us.
Well, what I can do to begin the process is send you our plan. Send you our plan, and like I said, it's a minimum of 2 years because we didn't fund it all this year, and possibly 3, and see if we're all in agreement on what we're going to do there. But it's pretty extensive. I mean, the total price tag, and I'm going off memory, but I think it's about $750,000. improvements and starting with, like I said, phase 1 in 2019.
And so you're talking about $750,000 to do everything that was originally promised back in the MOU in 2005 or whatever it was? Or is that just first phase?
No, the first phase is like 300,000.
I don't think that whatever was initially done can never be done, because I think you'll see what happens when it floods, when there's a water. So there's a lot of things that are gonna have to be made to the original plans. My understanding is there was a beautiful layout, all that, it can't happen.
Well, I don't know if it can or not.
You don't want that in next flood.
It's your opinion, and I don't know if it can or not. But my understanding of reading the contract, and it was brought to our attention back then, is when that property was given over to the city or we allowed the city to, we swapped over some property in exchange. I think the property that we swapped over to the city was worth a lot more than what we got in return. And so all of those things were part of the improvements, in my understanding, reading the contract, to equalize, hey, we're giving away a lot more than we're getting. So that was my understanding. And I don't know if any of those things, I mean, an amphitheater, I don't think it's, I don't know what else was all, there was a lot of things in there, but I don't know, I mean, the flood we have, there are 100-year floods. I don't know if it would affect what they were proposing to build in there or not.
My understanding is at this point, and correct me, Mr. Rodriguez, is that irrigation lines have already been placed, so to try to maintain grassy areas at the bottom of the RDF. My understanding also was to build and construct something similar to McAllen, where you had sidewalks and maybe metal benches and soccer goals. I mean, it was pretty minimalistic, because we perfectly all know that it's really an RDF, and there are chances and days throughout the year where it's going to fill up with 2 or 3 feet of water. We also don't want to be making improvements that are going to be affected or destroyed by, water or saturation of water. But beyond just Bettis and Morris is that the one thing that I see very strong between the two entities of the school district and the city is building these city school parks. That's one thing that's always strung and rung a very good bell about how well we can work together. And instead of trying to work with differences, work what we have. And before we go on to further city projects, because my goal is that our city becomes more and more dense, we start losing the opportunity to have green space. Northwest McAllen my district is trying to affect that issue, where we're getting more dense. My boundaries are getting smaller in the last 15, 20 years, simply because there's more density. And as the city continues to grow north and northwest, we have to start forecasting. Of course, it's beyond the school district boundaries, but these are the things that we have already to go back, try to make our MOUs consistent, update them, if things need to be done, or some legal action taken to update them so that we're all have some sort of sense of uniformity, even if it means where it's boilerplate. And of course, with every administration or with a different city manager, there's always been a steady stream of thought. But Mr. Peckler's been there since before I was announcing.
I think this is a former city attorney.
This is true. But to be consistent, and then work with what we have before we start making other new, larger scale projects, And that was my thought. And I was one of the commissioners that brought this issue up for today.
I'd like to piggyback on what Commissioner Zamora just mentioned, and I think it's imperative that the city and schools work together to keep our neighborhoods as vital as possible. We can't let them deteriorate. We need to reinvigorate those that may be deteriorated so that our inner city stays a vibrant part of our community. Just to piggyback on what he said. I think it's very important. Do you have a comment?
Yes, sir, I did. That was part of it.
That was part of it.
Yeah.
Frankly, I'm glad you expressed it, Mr. Levin.
I know we've talked about it.
Yes, Mr. President. I think we should relook at any memorandum of understanding that's currently pending. So I think that's kind of all being said, but to be very clear, I think whatever is still pending needs to be reviewed and possibly amendments to be done. And this may be a very good one to start with, because whatever may have been as a rendition in the reservoir part, in the retention pond part, they may not no longer make sense because of what we've seen happen in retention ponds when a lot of water is put into them for a long period of time. Any structure in there, whether it's concrete pad or other, is going to have real problems. But maybe moving that to the perimeter, much like we've done over at Jackson, which has some campsites on the perimeter, and you got the soccer field down at the bottom. And so that could be a pretty good way where things that aren't really structured in the pit of it But now you may need to move them to the top to what trustee Espacio was saying, is, you know, we've traded some and given some, and we all have. But this may be a really good chance for us to regroup and now look at what was thought for the pit, maybe, or the retention pond, I'll move it to see, including the school part. If there's land area in the school on the brim of it, then let's look at that, and maybe there may be some funding stream on our end.
Because we might save a lot of money doing that, right, without living up to the original plan and
We could.
adjusting it
Absolutely.
and get it done faster, maybe.
Exactly.
Collaboration. Trustee Suarez.
Well, I think one thing is certain is that a lot of MOUs need to be looked at, but I think by both parties. And I think geographically too, we should set up committees. For example, it makes sense for Commissioner Villalobos and Trustee Alexander to get together and talk about what's going on at Pettis. But my concern is that Garza Elementary. There's been an issue there that I've discussed since day one that I've been on the board with the city, and that is the safety of our schools. There is no fence that separates or protects Garza Elementary from anybody walking onto its campus, because the actual park is open to the public, and there's no fence that would secure anybody from coming in. Now, God has protected us and nothing has happened, but it's been a concern that has not been addressed. I don't think that the school district putting a chain link fence, dividing the property is fair, because that's not what's happening at McCullough. That's not what happened at Jackson.
Trustee Suarez, they probably don't know what's next to Lark. You might-
Yeah, it's all large.
They don't know what
Lark
is.
Community Center.
Sorry.
Not the park.
Right. The park and Lark Community Center and Garza Elementary is all lumped on one piece of property.
Yeah.
So if I park at the park and I walk, I can walk straight to the campus and there's no division, which means they have full access to the park during school hours. So
You're referring, I apologize for interrupting, you're referring to the parking lot, that they're together, correct?
no, I'm referring to the actual land is together. I could park, I could go to the swings and walk around the building and go straight into our school grounds.
During the school session.
So, and perhaps when it was written, it wasn't written with safety concerns. I think things have changed now, and I think it's something that we need to discuss. Perhaps I'd be willing to be on the committee. I'm sure Commissioner Zamora would be on the committee, but when we look at how we should tackle this, I think that a trustee and a commissioner should pair up together and head the committee together, of course, with all the important parties in place.
Well, I agree with you on a lot of that, but I think overall, I think that each one of us has a passion for the schools in our districts or in our areas that we all want to have needs. So I mean, right now I want bathrooms at Travis, outside bathrooms. I believe they've found a way, but I'm not quite sure yet. But we do need outdoor bathrooms at the tennis courts. Those tennis courts are used quite often, and so I would like to see bathrooms at Travis. I'm sure I continue to go through Victor Fields and other schools. Jackson is in my district also. All of us could find something that we would like to have in each one of our schools because we are joined together. And I think if we did get a committee, I think we should go by and say prioritize the needs of each one of the schools and the city parks and start and choose, I mean, together as a team, which one's the most important, and start working on those and let our citizens see that we are doing things collaboratively and we're moving forward together for their kids and for our citizens. And so I think getting a committee, going somewhere with this and understanding each other on what our needs are and where we need to start is a huge beginning for all of us. So if you get something, I get something.
No doubt, but to me, safety is probably the most important thing.
It definitely is.
Mr. Rodriguez, correct me if I'm wrong, I do understand that there was some schools where there is a city and school or city park with a school that we actually did install fencing in the last fiscal year, mostly on the south side. And I think certainly that's a good step towards identifying, for example, Trustee Suarez mentioned the Garza Marching Center, and that's something we can certainly build on.
Mr. President, thank you, sir. I know we've leveraged CDBG funds very effectively in the areas that qualify for those funds, the community development block grant, federal funds that the city receives, and And of course, you know, construction's really for the city, but the city's been amicable and worked with us in leveraging some of that funds with the school district, and then we leverage our funds as well. But sometimes it doesn't qualify, or there's something that went wrong. It didn't happen this year. And Brown, with a lot of effort, a 2 or 3 year period between the city and the school district, and some documentation that we needed wasn't there. And that we have to apologize for. But the community needed that project. And because it didn't have the federal funds or the CDBG funds, it got 3 years of work stopped. So I'm hoping, and again, revisit, maybe we have to leverage a little bit more of our money and maybe a little bit more money in the city in a different way, other than CDBG. And not rely in that southern quadrant area that it's only CDBG and without CDBG. I'm not saying it is, but sometimes it seems like we're putting a lot more support and effort on some other areas of the city who don't receive that. It comes directly out of our coffers. And so that remains a concern, is I hate to see the gap continue when we're talking about community parks and projects that community wanted, the jogging trail, that community wanted the athletic stops, that community wanted a baseball field, that community wanted revisions to the basketball court, and it just didn't happen.
And that's where we can also write grants, because if I'm not mistaken, part of Bettis's park was also funded by a grant, partial. You guys all remember that, when Sally Gabbard received a partial grant? So, they're out there, we just need to write them.
On both sides.
Yes.
And maybe again, this collaboration, and I think our
Exactly.
board president could work on forming a committee from our ways. One last thing, Mr. President, and this has come up, but we had a couple of citizens write us, and I don't know where we are. We did pass it on to the superintendent and involve mankind, tennis courts. And it may be the case in others. It is too.
I think it's item number 7.
Well, I'll wait till number 7. Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, anything else? I thought we did have a committee appointed 3 and 3, so, but I don't know, if we did, they hadn't met. So we probably should.
Some members are no longer.
You need to know about what our highway plans are, street plans, or bicentennial, et cetera, because it affects growth in the district. And so we need to do some better communication. The easiest way is to have a committee, 2 committees do it. So we'll come back and re-establish our committee. I think we're not only 3 people, and they probably need to have regular scheduled meetings. At least every other month, maybe every
At
other
least.
month. Time flies by, so the committee can decide, but for sure.
On my side, I'd like to volunteer to be on that committee.
I have 7 volunteers on our side there, so we're good, okay?
I defer to you.
We have 2 different committees.
We can have different committees, right?
One is, so.
Well, especially if we get to the next topic, that may require one by itself.
I hopefully that will come out of this, because
Yes.
it's difficult to
It
do
was only the
full board and full city commissioners. Okay, anything else on the memorandum? And Roy, you're gonna get the plans that we have.
Right, and we need to revisit the MOU, make sure that we understand what the original intent was, and we'll move forward from there. Get the budget.
So I got 3 is discussion is possible action on stadium renovations and future events.
Mr. Mayor, again, that's another item that I had wanted and requested, and I do appreciate this entire board entertaining it. As I recall from reading, I wasn't obviously on the board back then, but between the 2 entities, closer to the sum of $5 million that's been invested in that venue. The city of McAllen recently had an opportunity to host an NAIA football championship game. I actually pulled out the Monitor article and kind of recited all the various projects, and unfortunately I left it on top of my desk. But nevertheless, the one item that has not been brought to light, and I come to understand, that we're deficient, and we were actually not the award winner or awarded the championship game for the 6th school year or year was the press box. And I understand there was some discrepancy between the then existing superintendent, and of course this is a completely different board now on both sides. We have to make a commitment. We have to make a commitment. Is this something that we really want to have a vision for our citizens, whether they're our students or parents or extracurricular activities, hosting city events with the opportunity to hold and maybe get some national attention, either through the holiday parade or through an AIA football championship or what have you, or a soccer tournament. But I think we really need to settle down. Is this something we want to have as a vision for our city? We need to have a venue that is second to none in the region, period. And if you're gonna wanna make money, you need to spend money. And I like to see, and I'm sorry to raise my voice, but it's because I'm really, really invested in this. At first, when I was approached by this project, I said, this is a loser. And Mr. Rodriguez can tell you how I felt about that. But I got convinced. We're spending so much time and money in bringing sports tourists into our city. We saw what can happen with an international baseball tournament. We saw what Pop Warner does there on the Leon. We see all these things, and I think we're doing a pretty darn good job of, again, using city school parks and bringing these economic dollars down here. But I think for a city of our size, only 150,000, we can do more because our region certainly can support more with over 950,000 people in Hidalgo County. And I think we really just need to stock up, get it firm. Is this a commitment that we're gonna do or not? Because a lot of time and effort has already been invested into it. And if this, the two entities are gonna say, you know what, it's really not worthwhile, maybe in another 10 years or another 2 cycles of a board, great. I mean, I'm okay with that. But I really see if there's an opportunity now that can be seized, and if one of the things that we could invest in was to do a press box and remodel it, so it's ADA compliant, among other things, to actually start getting this attention. That venue has a lot of possibilities, has a lot of potential. But it's up to us, representing our citizens and our constituents, what it is, how far we want to go with it. And that was my whole feeling on it, and I'll let anybody else want to speak on it.
If I may, I'll speak to that real quickly. We have a master plan of the entire area that has already been put forth, and it's in our office somewhere. And it includes a skybox or press box with an elevator and a runway that goes to the west, and it opens up the whole marquee area. So we have that in place. It even incorporates the courtyard between the parking lots, McAllen High School, and it even goes south a little bit. It's a master plan. I think we'll get you a copy, or you should have a copy. Because I know it was discussed. Okay. Yeah, and we've discussed it over and over again. It was part of our bond issue, and it was part of other discussions that we've had all along. Are we in? Yeah, we're in. We'd love to see it happen because of all the possibilities that exist if we do have something like that.
What's the cost?
Well, it was in phases, and the first is $5 million, $3 million from the state, $2 million from the school district. And so it's in phases. I think here would work with, I'm sorry, Mr.
No, please.
I think what worked here, Mr. Vela, our board president, was on that committee. It was a 2-member committee, member correctly, Mr. Ball, and then there was a couple of commissioners, and I think the superintendent and the city manager. And they worked out a lot of the details with the vendors. I think Halif was one of them that did the rendition, fabulous rendition of what Mr. Board President pointed out about a breezeway, the parking lots being redone. The elevator said there was a lot of upgrades to it. And at one point also on the south side, that's why the sign was moved to the north side, because that's making room for bringing in and closing in the U in the future, and maybe below this, the athletic field we fit there, field office, I should say. So all of that is another item, again, dust off. President can point something from the board. I'm sure he'd like to serve, being if he can carry it through. And then the city the same, and put our together, and you can start to see what can we possibly do as the next step.
And I think the bigger question is, are both entities in a fiscal position to even make and go with that endeavor? Because if we're not, it's okay. I mean, it's going to be a dead issue for me. Because if we're not, then why make the effort at this point? Maybe sometime in the future. But if we are considerably within the next fiscal cycle, maybe 2 fiscal years, that we can, then let's proceed forward. Because the way I look at it, we're not getting, at least from the city side, and I don't sound selfish, we're not getting a return on our investment, or our ROI. We're not getting a return. And the only way we can do that is to try to promote the venue. But if we have a venue that is deficient and is not going to be able to capture those sporting organizations that they want to come here, then it's all for naught. And so I would want to see, maybe between the two entities, identify those recommendations that I think that had been previously made by one of the football organizations, and prioritize. What is gonna get the biggest bang for our buck to try to land, you know, a national-wide, you know, championship or what, or, you know, another entity to come down here so we can actually, you know, try to maximize the potential of that venue. And like I said, if it's not in the budget, it's not something, then that's okay. I can understand. But I'd like to see, you know, where we can to go forward if possible.
And it's, our fiscal position is that we're very lucky to be associated with a partner that has deep pockets. So that's our position.
Always looking for money.
No, in seriousness, the passing of the TRE presented many options for us to put on the table, and some of those options we've been exploring for the near future as well as looking out into a little bit further out. So, all of this is a possibility.
I want to say Friday night families thing, but our agenda is 60 pages and 45 of them are full. Yeah, I think it's important, but
No question.
It's a big, but this is obviously a multi-decision project.
I guess what Mr. Vela said, our facility education master plan is incorporated
Yes.
those efforts. So that shows you this projecting up to 10 years out. So it's in there, it's just a question of timing. And what our partner's commitment is as well.
And
Probably the heavier side would be on our partner, as it was last time, it was around 30 million.
I was hoping to take
Is
turns.
it true that are you restricting some UIL activities because of the press box?
No, not as far as UIO, no. But in terms of comparing our facility to other facilities in the region, yes, in terms of quality of and ability to service some of, yeah, we could bring in a lot of activity if now we're competing with Cavanish Field in Corpus Christi or United Field in Laredo, even some of the venues here in the valley that have come a lot closer to where we are. This would put us above and beyond anybody else.
Real quick, like just from the marching band competition angle, I love Bands of America and using that facility. And Marco, I think you were there too. It was wonderful to see 28, 32 marching band organizations, and it's just not the kids, it's their parents. And as I'm learning from Mr. Vedek, when you bring the parents, they bring an aunt or an uncle and their sister, and it usually involves a hotel stay, and certainly a restaurant, you know. And a lot of other things that goes into an economic generator. And so as long as we maintain the venues like that and maybe additional ways to promote it, you know, and that's just one small smidget, Bands of America. You know, happen for a one Saturday event, you know, where you can try to make it into a 2-day event or whatnot. And I think the more groups we make, the more potential we have.
And then beyond a shadow of a doubt, that is true. And that's why we went out and we put in that $1 million scoreboard that is being paid for through sponsorships. I mean, that's one of the key reasons why we put it there, to get us that attention. Last night, as a matter of fact, I was talking to a promoter who wants to bring some of his Mexican national teams to come play. They don't want to play at another venue. They want to play at our venue. The only thing that we found difficult is that when it comes to time to do something like that, there are so many hoops that we've got to go through. And I'm not only talking about on their end, but on our end as well. Who's going to run it, who's going to facilitate it, who's going to promote it, who's going to cater it, who's going to serve it. That was the big issue with the July 3rd game that we had when we had the two Mexican soccer teams that played at the stadium. Nobody wanted to jump on the ball, and I remember at that time when the discussion started, I was board president and had several communications with then Dr. Barrera and Mr. Trevino about reaching out. Who is the contact? Who is the promoter? And who's going to be the lead dog? So we have to figure that out as well, and that's going to come out in the memo of understandings that we're going to have with all the different facilities that we have, because I've spoken to at least 3 promoters who have said, I would love to do events in McAllen, but I've got to clear so much tape and I've got to go through so much work that it's easier for me to take my promotion elsewhere. And that's been the hardest decision. You know, they love the facility, they love the way it is. Does it need upgrades? No doubt. No doubt. But at the same time, we've been trying to come up with ways that we can promote, that we can grow the facilities, that we can make it better. I mean, at the end of the day, we're still putting lipstick on, but at least we're dressing it up a little bit and making it a little better than what it is now. So to your point, I totally agree, but there's got to be an understanding of who's going to be the promoting agency, who's going to do that, because You know, the promoter yesterday was like, well, I really don't want to deal with the caterer that the city has. I'd much rather bring in my own catering. Obviously, through sales, that's their opportunity to generate a little bit more revenue. Besides, you know, bringing the teams in, that's how they can offset their costs. So, you know, to make it a multi-event center, it's a great idea. And it's a beautiful facility to do that. But we've got to be able to figure out and communicate between both entities on who's going to do it, this is how it's going to be, and this is how it works. And at the end of the day, I think that all goes back to reading the MOUs and finding out, is this the point of contact, is this who I go through?
Well, there was discussion early on when we started this, I should remind you, the school districts continue. We put a brand new field out there. The lighting for that was updated, and the scoreboard as well. So we continue to keep improving that to meet the needs of the community and the public as well, and to bring the spirit and morale of our public schools that have many people coming in there. And the more they come in and experience that moment, whether it's a soccer game, whether it's band, games of Texas, it just promotes more wanting to come to use that facility. But one of the things we talked on, I'm buying and selling, but it was talked about is the idea of a sports authority. It might help that both parties have representation in creating it, and they would then be the clearinghouse for making sure that the insurances are appropriate, the contracts are written correctly, the scheduling is done, et cetera, et cetera. So that's something to think about.
Mr. President, it's great that we were fortunate that we had our TRE pass, and that's an additional funding source for the district. And one of our main funding sources is our students, and our students are down, our enrollment is down, we're down 800 students, I think, this year. There's a new school opening up on the south side that we're going to take a hit from, I'm sure. When we closed Nevada, we lost 120 kids that just didn't come back. And with the new school opening up in August over on the south side, and my understanding is it's projected to open, our south side schools are going to lose. So that's a revenue source that the school district loses. It's a big hit for the school district. And I know all of these projects are in the plan that was put together years ago, a couple of years ago. And so when Mr. Vela says that we look for our partners for, we do, and we're willing to work with you guys, but we're kind of in a situation where as enrollment continues to decline, it's less funding for our school district.
And to that point, our primary purpose for existing is to educate children, first and foremost. And so we have to be looking at the staffing needs that we need to hold and retain those, to provide quality education, to ensure that each and every child walks out of our school district with a college and career-ready high school diploma. That's first and foremost. And so everything else is great, and we know it has importance, and we want to be a part of it, but we got to look at where the pennies fall in. Even with the TRE, even more so with the TRE, because we can't go to the bite of the apple on that one.
Okay, that's good for the committee.
Yes.
Right? Obviously, we've got a joint interest.
Yeah, and we mentioned Sports Authority. We've talked about that for many years, and it is probably something that needs to be revisited. Just put it out there.
Speaking of state, are you going to play at the softball complex? Is that what? Are you looking at holding some games there or anything? Or
No, sir, not at this point. Unless you run a big baseball tournament, I don't know if it could handle varsity baseball, but we don't have any plans at this point for middle school or for baseball or softball. I know that was one of the visions, but we don't have it in the books
you
at
guys
this
want to
point.
have a tournament, that seemed to me there's some room for that. Which brings me on to the natatorium, if we could. Make a good splash. But we think, we're looking at sports tourism. We also look at a partnership with you to have kind of facilities that you would draw all the tournaments that you want to do and have the kids have opportunities to win meets and tournaments and practice facilities they wouldn't otherwise have. So that's kind of where we were with on that. We've been tossing around for 3 or 4 years trying to do other partnerships. We're back to being the original marriage, if you will, with the school district. And so we're have a rough estimate of the cost. We kind of look at the northeast school district in San Antonio was our model that was built, and we know that. And it's something similar but improved version, if you will. So we're going to seek hopefully some help from the legislature on that. What we did do to tell them is without doing the definitive agreement, if we have an agreement at all. And I think that's where we'd like to end up within the next, before the session really gets going in January, kind of a consensus, maybe a joint letter it's non-binding necessarily, but that you are interested in participating with us in that. Whether it's, kind of management of the facility and the O&M side and we're the construction side, something, whatever that is, I think that's one of the things.
I think our previous conversations, informal at best, have centered around the operating model and what structure do you place on the operations and aspect of it. I understand the brick and mortar hard dollars that go into it. That aside, you gotta keep it working. And that's what we're interested in looking at in terms of operating budgets and operating structure.
In the actual operation, and I think that's the best thing for us. That works.
Yeah.
So before you go, you threw out like a little teaser, and I got teased a little bit. So you mentioned something about the softball tournament. If we were interested in some, and this is I haven't discussed it with you. We just food for thought. I just thought about it right now. We host. We in SAR high schools host 2 huge tournaments that draw schools from out of town. One is our Pound Fest, our volleyball, and the other is our Border Bash basketball. One of the things that I'd like, to discuss with Mr. Vela and see what we could take it is to have a joint effort to where the city's involved in engaging more school districts and city participation so that we get these more schools staying in our hotels and eating at our restaurants. I know that's music to your ears, a lot of discussions that we've had, but I think if we were to get together with we can get whoever's in charge of that, the city, get together with the athletic department and make these tournaments even bigger with your help, drawing hotel sponsors, drawing some big names. I think it would really grow that. This year, I think the Border Bash drew in.
I would say it was over 60 teams.
60 teams that no matter what are going to eat twice a day, and it's a two-day tournament. So.
And I thought, the reason I said it would be nice if it was, because it's a high school deal, it's McAllen as a leader of that, and we're joint sponsors or whatever it is for those kind of tournaments, for both those facilities. And hopefully swimming and ultimately tennis, but anyways, that's sure with baseball and softball facilities.
I will go on record and say that I have limited discussion with one of my fellow board members about a potential naming rights sponsor who's ready to pull me up $250,000 on an auditorium. So either we reinvest that into our auditorium that we have at the school district, or if we can find a way to put a brick and mortar together, we have a pretty good start.
From my end of it, I think we as governmental entities need to leverage our resources. I think we all are in agreement with that. It doesn't make any sense in today's world that every school district has an auditorium, which is what's always been the case. School districts in metropolitan areas like San Antonio and Houston have already started doing this, where they partner with each other, find a common area, land that's in between the two, and they build a sports complex that deals with it. I was first approached by this in 2011, 2012 when I became aware of it, and was actually in the Consolidated Independent School District. I was working to see about City of McAllen, on City McAllen land, as I understood it, and McAllen ISD School District. If it could be something where we have 3, 4, or 5 individuals, I think it would be perfect and ideal. And we have a naming right as well, especially for maintenance going forward. I think that's.
Sam, I love you. Keep me doing it. You're a bigger man than I am. I've been trying to do it for 4.5 years.
Well, I mean, the superintendent talks about, have a dream, come to our school, help you fulfill it. So, it may never happen. It may only be just 2 of us. And that's all good, but we got to leverage our resources. Our taxpayers are counting on us.
We actually had the perfect location.
Yeah.
We did.
We still do.
We still own it.
Yeah.
Let's correct that. We still own the perfect location.
So are we going to number 4, talking about the auditorium already?
Okay, so it may be just a letter, I don't disagree with you, Sam, but.
No, we could certainly endorse an action like that, I'm sure. And I think it would be.
Interest of understanding.
We can mention we're trying to negotiate, or we think that might be a possibility of naming rights.
I've got a gentleman that has stepped up already, so.
Not to mention grants too. I mean, there's got to be some.
The Michael Phelps Foundation is a good one to start.
Absolutely. Okay, everybody else on that? Go ahead.
To the natatorium, I would just like to propose that we have a really, really good property right down the street, and more people would stay in your hotels and your restaurants right in front of rural high school. and they could participate in the natatorium in inside row and then the new natatorium in the front of Ware Road. I just think that's a really good location, and we've had that property for sale for a long time. We could take it off the books for sale, and we could, it's this property right here.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, to me, we already have a field, a swimming pool in the back, so you can hold 2 meets at the same time, and then just drive down the street, and you can stay at all these hotels, see all these restaurants here. To me,
Or the-
it's a win-win. Or
And you could also use the municipal
The municipal
park
pool, yeah.
for warm-ups and everything.
Yeah, makes
else,
a lot
of
which
sense.
is-
The 2 ones in San Antonio are on the national campus next to the football, so you can join parking.
Yeah.
The other is it could be where the parking lot is across from the current natatorium and then turn the other into parking
Yeah.
closer to the street. And that way you don't have to worry about traffic hitting the building.
And keep
As it
everything
did
in the
my
middle of
house.
McAllen.
I think that was a good efficiency. When the city hosted the Games of Texas, we all know where the swimming events were held. You know, and that was a shame because that required a 20-minute drive to another city and using another facility, which I really don't think that they're really that much superior than we have here.
Right.
But nevertheless, I think we need to seize on those opportunities because the Games of Texas, I think, did bring a lot of positive image to our city. But the one comment that I got from swimmers from McAllen Memorial is that the other contestants from upstate, from San Antonio and College Station, they were complaining like, why are we sitting on hot aluminum seats? Why it's not shaded? Why is it? So they're accustomed to a different level or expectation of a facility, and certainly that we need to kind of rise to that level to bring them.
Great. Well, we build a signature state.
Absolutely.
For sure. Okay, this is your item, I guess, possible utilization of the convention center.
You got it today.
We went first. And you know what? It's almost as nice as our boardroom.
Let me say this about the size of it. And I'm going to say this because I know Mr. Edgar's there in the back. We had over 35 tubas yesterday fill the 2 exhibit halls, exhibit hall A and B. What was more astonishing is that when I arrived 5 minutes before it started, the entire floor was booked. Mostly white-haired people, but it was booked. And it was wonderful. Well, except it was so wonderful to see how many people attended that, and it was a free event. There was a lot of participation. It was a lot of fun, and for the hour and a half that it took, I just saw a lot of glee, a lot of happiness there. And it was, and for what I understand, the city helped out in making that happen. Is that correct?
It definitely gets the Christmas spirit started.
Right, and I think that is just one little sliver again of an opportunity where we can have good positive results so we can have a joint city and school effort. And I like to see those type of events even if they're single day. We heard from 13 different school districts, so we know the parents came in. I'm sure there wasn't a study, but the opportunity to eat, restaurants here locally, McAllen were there. Maybe over time kind of morph it, where we have a holiday parade weekend, starting from Thursday, incorporating the Tuba Christmas, maybe adding additional, the Tuba Christmas being on Sunday, make it where we have an event every day, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, because if we're truly interested in attracting those from San Antonio and upstate, let's make their trip down here worthwhile. And events like Tuba Christmas is one of those events that I see from my vantage point as something for people to do on Sunday and stick around. Thank you, Mr. Edgar, for making that happen.
I think the issue was brought up, and I'm sure it was because of last year's graduation and the dates. There was some confusion. Maybe we didn't get our dates in on time or whatever. I think we've had plenty of private discussions that may have cleared up a lot of that, but we just want to be sure to formalize it by clearing it on today's agenda. Haven't spoken about it. I know the superintendent and I have spoken about it several times, as well as some of the other trustees. That was the issue, and it mainly centers around graduations and the importance of using the facility for our students.
Having your graduation set well in advance of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so it shouldn't be.
It shouldn't be, but
Give us 10 years worth of dates.
Yeah, I'm serious, do that.
You are our #1 partner, so.
Well, is that going forward, right?
forward.
Last year we were the #2 partner. The #1 partner has a new venue. It's going to
Fix
be.
that problem.
You gotta give us some dates.
okay. Well, they're set, so that was good, easy.
Yeah.
The next item of discussion, it's my number 7, but it could be your number 6, I'm not sure. The action, possible action or discussion about the tennis courts and other athletic facilities, but specifically the tennis courts at McAllen High School. There is some confusion in the community as to who has jurisdiction over those tennis courts and what times they have jurisdiction over those tennis courts. We get a lot of letters, we get a lot of complaints, we get a lot of go, hey, well, I was there and someone's giving private lessons and we can't use it and they're taking up 4 courts and et cetera, et cetera. So I think we need to iron down the rules or regulations, if you will, that pertain to the jurisdiction of, the timing of, and how we can relay those politically to all of the people who use those tennis
I'm in
courts.
my 41st year with the city, and there was a problem 41 years ago. So if you can solve it tonight,
Well, I think everyone will agree that if we just post on there from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. it belongs to this entity, and at 4 p.m. it belongs to this entity, and no private use of for-profit, so we see that a lot. So that's what that was about.
I think it's safe to go on the record that there shouldn't be any for-profit
No,
use.
there is not. If it's on school property, it's not.
So if somebody is using it for profit, you know, we need to nip that in the bud.
But I think the confusion line, I think trustee, Mr. President has pointed out, we need to sit down and discuss it, is when it's the city's time. It was confusing whether the city was allowing it to happen, and or even if they were aware of it. And so once we put this distinction up and understand that, you know, there's no time unless the city allows it. But when it comes to a school district, we cannot allow for profit on our facilities. You know? So.
And we don't allow it either, right?
No, I don't think so.
Presently, what is the rules? During 8 to 4, it's closed completely to the public, and at 4 o'clock, it's open to the public?
Let the super and I visit on this one, and let's agree on what we're supposed to be doing, and we'll report back to you.
And I think if you extend the conversation to soccer fields, because I know what happens at soccer fields.
Yes.
The tennis courts at Travis and some of the other facilities as well, but I think if we have a template for one, a template will apply to others.
And I think to be fair, once we do that and put the notice about time, I think it also be put in, if you have any concerns, the number to call. And it probably ought to be the police department to say, okay, you know, because somebody they take it upon themselves to start setting these contracts and having them meet there and doing things that sitting with the school district a lot.
So that I'm clear, the land belongs to the school district, but the actual courts and facilities built on the land is the city?
No, it belongs to the school district.
Everything belongs to the school district.
Now, the land sitting on belongs to the school district. The improvements have been provided in many cases by both the school district and the city, restrooms being number one, and that pretty much consistent, the city has helped do the restrooms. So that's why the mutual understanding, it's the execution of the use of it, that after a certain hour, it's now the city's, but it kind of falls through the cracks when, okay, we own it, and we have jurisdiction, but we've allowed through someone here to give it to the city during this time. Now it's, and then neither one was picking up the ball to say to this vendor, you can't be doing this.
I understand.
And especially telling our citizens, mutual, they can't use the court, which is what's happening.
I understand.
And it extends to soccer too, so
Soccer,
Yeah.
we need to.
absolutely.
Yeah, if I could suggest to you involve the Boys and Girls Club on that, because there's problems with, you know, they're trying to use different courts in different fields, and there's private people on there, they're for-profit.
It's on the table, and city manager should have that cleared up.
And that changes.
We'll have ratification at our next
Well,
meeting.
regarding the sport program time and all.
Okay, the next item we brought up, we put on the agenda for today was a discussion that centered around the health plan for both entities. Between both entities, we have over 5,000 covered lives. And if you drew a Venn diagram in terms of plan design, I think there would be a lot of overlap. We all have very similar plans. There may be some outliers that could be probably brought into the fold. And it was a discussion to see where we could use the power of the numbers to maybe leverage, I don't want to say better deals, but with better healthcare. And at some point, I've checked with legal, and Mr. Crane assures me that we could even have a single plan that is entered into by both governmental entities. that may be beneficial. It would take some doing in the beginning, but it's not something that cannot be overcome. And then along that same discussion, that we look into the possibility, whether we get together on the health plan or not, but I think it's imperative that because of the rising health costs and the demand for better health care, that we look into establishing some local provider networks where we can have agreements with our providers that guarantee a certain level of service for our employees and for our lives, and at the same time we guarantee them a set rate that we can be prearranged so that our people know what they've got going in, and the doctors and the clinics know what they've got, what we have to provide for them. If you look at our claims processing, people are leaving the city to go to other health facilities. If we can keep them in McAllen, because those are the people that are paying taxes to both entities here, I think it warrants some pretty deep discussion as to whether we can have a better health plan for both groups.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm sorry, if I can intervene, this is Tristan without the listening. On this matter, I'm going to recuse myself because my employer is health insurance for the city, so I'm going to sign off at this one. Thank you for allowing me to participate via teleconference.
Absolutely, drive safely.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's one where you need to meet with some people that know more than what I know about it, is discuss, and maybe have two commissioners and two school board members sit on the committee to voice their concern, connected to what the issue is for them. I agree. Take a look at that. You know, there's always roadblocks, but doesn't mean we can't overcome those. And I think some of it is a reduction of choice, but when you're talking about saving money, it's sometimes you have to make those tough decisions.
If I may, I think it'd be good if maybe in the early stages of that, as you form the committee, elected officials just tap into our employee groups respectively and kind of hear their thoughts or concerns. Maybe have some focus groups, some conversations, etc. Could be done through our two healthcare administrative groups to kind of filter and get some data of what they're, because we may be thinking it's X and they may be looking at Y, Z. And so that may help us early on and to fill into the discussions of what might work for us going forward.
On that point, I think because of leverage, we may be able to expand our services and the benefits that we provide simply by increasing the size of the plan.
Mr. President, find out what other entities that have done this and what obstacles they've had to overcome. I don't know, is there anybody locally that's doing it?
Well, I know there's been private discussions with neighboring entities, both municipalities and other school districts, that we come together in a looser organization to form or participate in those local provider networks where we can prearrange our agreements with everyone. So it can be done. And instead of being pushed around by health going forward, maybe we should at least come to the table and be an equal partner with health going forward. And I think we've talked about it, and I think it's something that you and I are both familiar with. That we can.
Well, I'm going to try to get our individual health people together.
That's a great start in terms
start
of
it, and maybe do a memo out to the rest of us and how to set up the negotiations a little bit.
Absolutely. And collaboration there with our neighbors would be very worthwhile as well.
Just a comment, if I could here. For the folks that are, I'm going to use the term loosely, but I totally respect experts on this. I think it's very important for us to reduce to writing what the objective is here, because this is a really complicated monster. And so we need to know A through Z, because there's that many things. What are we trying to accomplish here with health plans? That would be very, very important. That should be step one. Let's agree, both parties agree that these are the objectives, and then move forward.
And that's why I brought up that I think that foremost you have to know who your customer is. And your customers are employees. And so, having been in the insurance business, if you're in a target market, and that's what we're doing, targeting two groups of people, bring them together, what are the similarities, what are the differences, and do the differences outweigh the similarities and throw us off on the pricing of the product. If you're trying to manage the price of the premium
to the employee and trying to keep that as much as you can, given the increased cost of services and products in the healthcare side. Because I think we're saying the same thing, but I think it's always know your customer, what the expectations are. That helps you then formulate the other steps that you need to do.
The larger amount of people that you bring into the group, you get a better rate and more options. Because the lesser amount, of course, you get a reduced amount of
But we're gonna get
options.
educated people, which group has a older age, more women, and more of all of that, so we're looking at instead of all the factors. It plays a big role.
Oh, yeah.
I think we've looked at that. The demographics of our employer group is exactly the same.
Yes, they're the same.
It's exactly the same. In
What's
terms
your
of
basic CPI?
age, gender, ethnic origin, I think it's the exact same ethnic group. Mayor.
If I may, I think the administrative fee would be where you're trying to do the cost saving, but I don't think I think we really need to look at it, like we said, let the experts look at it, because if you go from 3,000 people to 5,000 people, the administrative fee might change from $100 a person to $75 a person, but the claims is what gets us. We still have these massive $1 million claims, and so there's really no cost savings. So I think first we need to see, is there a cost savings if we put it together, because it's the claim, it's not the administrative fees where we're gonna save money, it's the claims. And then I think it's the pharmacy benefits is the area where we can all get together. But I think there really does need to be a big study from the experts to see if there is anything to save, because it's the claims that are killing us all.
Yeah, and there's different schools of thought in trying to manage those claims. And I'm one of the believes in the wellness programs now. You know, the way we undertook it, it may have been too aggressive. We were doing it annually. And most companies, it's 3 to 5 years as a wellness that the company pays, and you go through a battery of tests and the like, and determine where your health may be, and a lot of times you capture early on some issues that need to be addressed and much more manageable from a cost containment and early detection versus with the way we're doing it now, we wait until it's a catastrophic event. And now you're talking $1 million a year for one individual in your plan. And you're, $2 million a year, a month being paid out in claims, and that's where you're running into trouble, and now you have to put monies into it.
Is the school district self-insured?
Yes.
I don't think the money is in the administration. I think the money is in the leverage that we can accomplish by asking providers to come to the table with collaborative
It's the
agreements.
formula.
And all of a sudden, 5,000 lives demands a lot more than $3,500 or $2,000.
Yeah, the price.
And the challenge is to increase your bargaining position, you might have to limit the providers that you deal with, because that's what they're looking for.
Right.
Yeah, I'm sure they'd all come to the table. I feel like they would.
Yes.
Well, I think we all need to look at that. That's probably our biggest expense right now, outside of salaries, health
It's
insurance.
10% of our budget.
And the beauty is that it is a benefit, and money that you can leverage to attract and retain employees into your respective groups, is you have a sound plan that can sustain what you're trying to do and get provide an employee the needs they have from that. Okay, so we're going to put our people together. Right, right? City and school police departments.
Again, we asked that discussion be brought to the table, and really this discussion started when Chief came to visit us at a workshop, and that workshop came about because of the activities that were taking place around the country and the importance it is that safety be our utmost concern, as Trustee Suarez mentioned earlier. We want to be sure that we are, as two governmental agencies, both with independent police forces, provide for them the assets and the resources that they need to be number one in their respective obligations. And if there's any collaboration between the two, that they work together in terms of training, in terms of shared assets, in terms of budget models, any way you want to call it. And in terms of jurisdiction, because heaven forbid we ever get hit with a situation, a tragedy or a disaster, whose jurisdiction takes precedent, at what time, the last thing we want is confusion. And that was what we wanted to bring to the table, to be sure.
I agree, and I think one of the things we offered in we'd like to discuss is having dispatch at our place because we have the other equipment and it makes more sense. If something happens of that magnitude, we both need to know immediately. And I think that's the best way of doing it. We've taken in the fire department now back again, and so we're ready to make that offer. And I think that's a great step. I know you're not going to agree to that tonight, but I think if that's the first thing we agree to, that's a big step towards cooperation with the department in the communication network we need to establish for each other.
Absolutely. Depending on what disaster or what tragedy is before us, I think everyone needs to know where they fall into place into the pecking order of commands, if you will, or actions to be taken. We want to be sure that, from our standpoint, that both forces are working as one to provide the best possible service.
Yeah, because the kids are both our responsibilities, and that's, I think.
It's everybody's when it's happening. It's a live action.
And we really understand that there is a school district police force has a different view of how they enforce as opposed to the public police force, and there has to be some blending of actions so that we provide trusting.
Is there a protocol in place already right now, what the city, the school district police do when it gets out of hand, or?
Without bringing that to light, I think the chief and our chief, or he may want to address it if it's okay with.
From our end, is we got to be cautious about our security protocol being talked about in too much detail in public.
Right.
The state education code requires an MOU between the entity in a city that's a school district and the police department has jurisdiction as well. The current MOU is 22 years old, and that's the one we're operating with right now. We're simply, in the context of this discussion, putting forward the idea of renewing that MOU and then creating an opportunity to join these communications. I'll give you an example, just to see how this would operate. Saturday, we had 15 different agencies in the city of McAllen working the parade, and all those agencies were in one room for comm purposes. In case any one of us had something to do with something, we all knew at the same time. The object with what the mayor brought forward here a minute ago was, you know what, we can have your school district. We don't want to do their work. We want to do their work. We defer their work. They have specialized work areas, and so do we. But very oftentimes, we're both doing work we don't know about, and we may be responding. The other idea I brought forward in the sense of this: when we have a major event, the 911 calls will come to our center as opposed to, your school district offices. So having them in the same room, doing their jobs, would create efficiency for us, and by virtue of that, greater effectiveness for our communities. That's the simplest way I can put it forward in terms of just operating from one center.
To that end, also, it would be nice in the emergency management process, if there is something happening at one of our schools, we would know, like, okay, everyone's going to go to the Walmart, and all the buses are going to go to Walmart, and the parents are going to go to Walmart. And there needs to be a line of communication, too, like who's going to take the lead on the tweets that are going out to the parents, because when a crisis happens, all the parents flock to the school. And so we need to have a real clear emergency management thing of, if this happens at this school, you will be evacuated to this, and your parents will pick you up over here. And the city already knows it, there's already communication, and who takes the lead and all that. So we really need to get this around understanding. I thought that we'd already had a meeting, I thought we'd already moved our dispatch over to you, and I'm very concerned that we haven't done that. And so I'd like to see this to the forefront.
And none of this idea about establishing joint comm centers would venture off into your protocols and the things that you want to do and the things you should do. For example, at what time the school district does whatever, that your schools or campuses, none of this would infringe on that.
Right.
All we would do is now we would know what you're doing. And by virtue of the same application, you would know what we're doing. And we're not changing anything other than speeding up that communication and the knowledge and the information exchange. By virtue of doing that, we will be more effective. And when lives are at stake, those seconds matter a whole lot.
Chief, well, that sounds pretty, well, not easy, but take care of it. I mean, both chiefs are the professionals, do it, bring it to us, and I think everybody's on board.
Sure.
And I think that's just something that's not an easy fix, but just makes a lot of sense, and we can build on that from there. But communication is the most important. We learned a big lesson at the mall this summer.
Weather is a big thing too. Y'all seem to know the weather it'd be nice if the emergency management too, if we knew when hurricanes are coming and things like that, you seem to have a real heads up with the National Weather Service in Brownsville, that there could be a way that goes immediately to us as well. If we're in that loop, that would be wonderful.
And then there's the after-hours stuff as well for us. If you're lesser staffed, let's say your business day, and we're doing stuff on your campus sometimes and respond to calls and things like that. So all of that, again, all this would do, it wouldn't change. We don't want to do the work that MISD police officers are required to do, and we don't want them to do our work. We just simply want to enhance that communications process, that information.
But there has to be a partnership between the two
Yes.
in order to make them both work.
Absolutely, yeah. And we've offered a site within our communication center. Basically, imagine a dispatcher from McAllen PD here, and a dispatcher from McAllen PD right here, and one of your dispatchers in the middle. They're doing their own work. By virtue of that presence, they all know what's going on.
President, if you don't mind, I'd like to make a motion that we move forward on this.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded by trustee Alicea and seconded by trustee Sandiva that from the aspect of the school district, we move forward to, if I understand your motion, that we move forward on establishing or revising our MOU to establish a more revised newer MOU and to move forward with the combination of, or the communications aspect of both. Are there any discussions by the trustees on this motion?
Well, I thought the revision of all MOUs was being done earlier in the agenda, and I figured that this would be one that fell into that loop. I don't know if we need to specifically say.
Any others?
I think the difference between.
Probably do, Mr. Trustee, because this is pretty important, and we've got voluminous numbers of pages.
I'd like
This puts
this
it
to
up front and it puts it to the top.
And I think the difference between those and this one is
Yeah,
that
the
this
stadium.
establishes the communication aspect of
Yes.
it to take place immediately. So, is there any
There's
discussion?
no ambiguity as to what happened on last meeting. It's
Absolutely.
not about
Absolutely.
ambiguity, and not, you know.
So,
Thank you.
any further discussion by the trustees? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. We have a 5-0
We'd
vote.
like to do a corresponding. So moved for the city.
Second.
Second. Any discussion?
None.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, raise your hand. Motion carried.
You guys are easy.
Can I just jump in? I was a parent involved in the last gun at campus at Fossum. And with no disrespect to McAllen PD, McAllen ISD police had that school secured and under great control in minutes of the student having the gun on campus. Now, obviously, there's a difference between a student having a gun on campus and having something like Parkland happen in your school district or, up the road in Houston. But I am one of the, ones that has total, complete confidence in our McAllen ISD police. The same confidence I have in our McAllen PD, that when a situation arises, they will rise to the top. And I'd like to keep it as ambiguous as we can and make sure that we realize school district police, or school district police, city police, when we need to communicate and work together, we can get that accomplished.
Along those lines, as Chief Rodriguez pointed out, they're within the state, the governor has established through Texas State University, the Texas School Safety Center. And they provide training, including starting initially when you have two governmental entities, not necessarily elementary school district in the city, it could be two cities within a certain geographic area, or the city with the sheriff's department, is that they do their training together. And it starts with the formalizing a true protocol as to what will happen when. So my question is, has that already taken place in which we're doing our training together, leveraging the Texas School Safety Center for our training in events?
At this point, I know that we're training as a PD in our campuses. I attended the last training, but it wasn't a combined effort at this point. I know that there is collaboration and there is a lot of training, the same rules and regulations that you guys follow with regard to how you enter a building and what you do and don't do. But I haven't seen the unified training between McAllen PD and McAllen ISD.
Mind you, it's not just the tactical part, it's the strategic discussions, it's who does when, what, and so it goes beyond the event that occurs in which you have a tactical breach of a facility, which is key and very important, obviously. But this is early on, they have classes throughout the year using service centers, education service centers. Unfortunately, none are Region 1 right now. But that's more, and it's the very first in there, there's videos online, if you go to the Texas School Safety Center, that starts with walking you through establishing, starting first with the protocols.
And again, I'll just say this, there are some things that are going, that are school campus policy matters, that you're going to, we're not trying to get into that.
No.
But to make a distinction, for example, Tony Farina made a comment about the school event with one, I remember that event. What this will do is prevent us from going in there blindly and not knowing that an officer's already got under control. That's what this will do, is to effectively get that communication, that information exchange, on the spot. We have a situation in a school where he's already under control. We're not going to need to send officers in there with weapons drawn. In those cases, as the mall is evidenced for us, we have tons of people go there, not knowing who was who, what, where, even their own officers. So the idea simply here is to enhance that communication instantly. Many times we're going to be the ones with the information first because they're calling us or a 911 call that came to us. We're trying to get it to if you've got your dispatch, say, get your officer over here, this is what we've got. And then we know that they know, et cetera, and vice versa. This simply is enhancing communication between us. Imagine two dispatchers, one working in this particular boardroom and the other one working in the other boardroom, and we're in the same building, we don't know what's going on. We're just simply trying to bring them into the next seat.
Chief, I think the best way to describe it is two police forces becoming one team.
Yeah.
And working together to solve any situation.
Just to kind of piggyback, Trustee Saliba, Chief, sometime in summer we actually had that training where we actually had both departments work together. I know that I had been in discussion with Chief Rodriguez in regards to the communication center and whatnot. There was some logistical things that we came into, but I guess we did just.
Yeah, I think we've been developing this idea for some time now since we had to leave, and as a result of that, we actually got our officers into your buildings during the summer.
Yeah, but I think what the point, and that's how good and fine, that's key and it's important. The communication is vital, and it's part of this, but also is having combined discussions like we're having here, we're all at the same table. What is truly the protocol or the tactics that we're going to use and when and under what circumstance? This helps us to get to that point when it occurs, you know exactly what to do. So you have your school plan, you have your city plan, but now you have one when they overlap. What is the plan for that? And I think we've already found by leveraging this center, we've gotten information on how to do our own assessments of safety and security on our schools. Instead of reinventing it, they had a plan for us to follow. So that's all I'm suggesting. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Good discussion.
Good discussion. I think that's the end of it. I want to thank you, the school board.
Well, before we adjourn, my personal opinion, we're going to have a discussion, but let's really put it to task on a calendar. The next time we're going to meet before we adjourn. Can we do that? Can we do that?
If we do it on the first Monday, the next first Monday, I think it's the 2nd, December 2nd.
January.
I think December 2nd was yesterday.
No, December 2nd, 2019, because when you and I spoke, you wanted to schedule.
I suggested at least one annual, and then in between, or for our.
I think one a semester makes more sense.
At least once.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
We know like on first Monday when we don't have meetings.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
We'll do it with grades tomorrow.
They work together all day long and
You want to do it like in April, before the summer?
Yes, I'd like to do it in February. Because we'll still be in the middle of the semester. If you do wait till April, then nothing you can do until September of next year.
If we do it the first Monday, it's the 4th.
February 4th is the first Monday.
I suggest the 14th.
Mayor, I'd like us all
Some dollars
It's cheaper that way.
to start visiting those and get them up to par at
Could you
this
have
point.
the attorneys look and see what MOUs we actually have together, and so maybe have a list and what needs to be.
And which one is as old as the
The
22-year-old?
22-year-old is probably pretty well written, I think.
I wrote that one.
But that's good. I appreciate
But yeah,
it.
so that we can get up to par with all of them.
But thank you for being here. Thank you, school board.
At 5 p.m. February 4th, 5
He's
p.m.
not,
2009.
the secretary, talk to the mayor.
Sorry.
Thank you for the hospitality, Mayor, and the discussion, the future collaborations. I know our superintendent has gone through about 4 pencils writing things down, so I know he's taking the task. We appreciate the hospitality and the discussion, and it's good to get together. We hope we do it.
Motion to adjourn on your part.
Just FYI, I'm sorry.
And I know that discussion can continue, but if there's a motion to adjourn from one of the trustees, I'll entertain
So
one.
moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded in discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor of adjournment on the Board of Trustees part, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Okay, any action to come before city commission?
Just real quick, Mayor, on February 4th is the day before your State of the City, so you're usually practicing and running and jumping out. So just,
Are you jumping out of the plane this
time or what?
No, I can make this meeting.
okay.
I mean, it was only an hour and a
Part of the
half.
skit,
okay.
part of the skit.
Well, if you need to jump, you need to jump over there.
That'd be over here anyways. Okay.
All the time.
Yeah, no, Thanks.
Thank you. Good, sir.
Yeah, motion.
Many thanks.